Annyeonghaseyo and greetings, ninth graders. Let me apologize for my appearance. The corona beard is really getting out of control. And every time I present, I'm wearing this hooded sweatshirt. I look like a homeless person. But the fact of the matter is, I'm just really cold, and this thing is really nice and warm. Anyways, I want to talk to you quickly about our lesson for today. We're just basically going to have a very quick lesson. We have a coronavirus test on Tuesday and Wednesday, so please get ready for that. I also wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk about the issue of sample size and scientific thinking. It's related to something that we did last week in relation to our critical thinking exercise. So our objectives for today is to understand how to make scientific generalizations. Maybe you won't become an expert, but at least you'll have a better idea, or at least you'll recognize one way that people make mistakes when they're trying to make a scientific generalization. So our language objective will be to identify unscientific conclusions. And our keywords for today are sample size, reflect, valid, and reliable. So I wanted to go back and revisit this critical thinking exercise that we did way back in maybe our third lesson on the coronavirus. I know I talked a little bit about it when we had our review session on Thursday, but I wanted to go into this into a little bit more depth. So the question was really related to the high mortality rate of the coronavirus in Seattle. Now typically coronavirus only kills between 1 to 3% of people who get sick. However, in Seattle, that number was as high as 30%. And so I asked people, oh, how was this related to the low number of tests that were administered at that time? And most of you focused on the Trump administration, the federal government, how they're not testing enough people, how they made mistakes. And all those are true, but actually this, as I said before, was about ratios. It's about just numbers, hard science. And I wanted to delve a little bit more into this idea and explain it a little bit more so you can understand it a little bit more clearly. Munachi, she wrote to me after we did the critical thinking exercise and said, Mr. Kwok, can you explain this to me in just real simple language? And so let's just go ahead and go over this a little bit more thoroughly. So let's imagine that the number of people in Seattle that died was 30. Okay, so they have 30 deaths. And they're not really testing anyone in Seattle, and they decide, hey, you know what, let's test these 30 people who died of what we thought was the coronavirus. So they do 30 tests, and what? They find out that they have 30 positive tests. So there's 30 deaths, 30 positive tests, therefore they conclude coronavirus has a 100% mortality rate. Is that good science? No, of course not. Okay, so maybe they need to go back to the drawing board. Maybe they should test someone else who isn't dead. So they test one more person. And this person, they have flu-like symptoms and ends up they have coronavirus and they're not dead. So what does that mean? Does that mean that coronavirus has a 96% mortality rate? No, 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 no. We have to keep in mind that the number of tests doesn't accurately represent the larger group of people who may have the coronavirus. Okay, so this is a scientific issue that we call sample size. And then I gave another example to Munachi about me at Sejong Academy. So let's just say that I want to know about our Korean students at Sejong Academy. Most of our students are Korean, and so I start asking around. I'm deciding I'm going to ask a couple students and see where they're from, and then I'll make a conclusion about where our students at Sejong Academy are from. So I talked to two 8th graders, Eluege and Tiku, and I learned that they're from the Tamahe refugee camp. And so can I then conclude that most of our students from Sejong are from Tamahe? If I did, that would be a huge mistake because, as our current students know, there's almost no one from the Tamahe camp. So I take this information and say, hey, I'm going to ask a few more students. I'm going to ask 4 more students where they're from. And so I talked to our 3 brothers, Tadado, Tadashi, and Daikabashi, and I learned they're from Newpole. And then I also asked Keikopa and asked her where she's from, and she's from Newpole too. And so can I conclude that most of the students at Sejong are from Newpole and the rest are from Tamahe? So the answer is, of course not. What I need to do is I need to ask enough people at Sejong Academy to get an accurate picture of what's going on with all the students. I don't have to ask all the students, but if I ask around enough, pretty soon I'm going to find out that, you know what, most of the Sejong students are from Mela'u, and a good number of students are from Mela or Bekla, and then I'll also learn that even though originally I talked to people from Tamahe and from Nupo, I'll learn that actually there aren't a ton of students from there. And maybe I'll learn that we've also got a handful of students from Umpia. So anyways, this is what we're talking about when we talk about this issue of sample size. And so for any kind of statistics to be valid and reliable, the samples have to reflect the larger population. And in this case, I want to focus more on validity. And this issue of validity is simply whether or not the answers you're getting reflect the questions you're asking. So if I'm asking like, oh, how many people die of the coronavirus, then if I'm not testing enough people, then that's kind of not a valid conclusion that I'm coming to. So early on, the Seattle outbreak was centered on nursing homes, and we know that the coronavirus affects elderly people. It affects old people much more severely than it does young people. So that might be another factor in the higher mortality rate that was happening in Seattle. This is just an image showing that, like, when we take a sample, we want a good, what we call a cross section of that society. So we want to make sure that everyone is accurately represented. So for instance, at Sejong, if I'm doing a survey on who came from what camp, I want to be able to see that not only are students mostly from Mela'u and Bekla, but I do want to see that we have a handful of students from those other camps that I mentioned, like Umpia, Nupo, and Tamahe. And if my results don't really show that information, then the validity of my sample is much less than it should be. And then we even have like an extremely complicated formula for how large our sample size should be, and I'm not going to get into those details, but there's some, the point is there's some math to sample size. Okay, so hopefully that helps clear up our critical thinking question about the mortality rate of coronavirus in Seattle. Now I just want to shift gears and move on to your test, which will be tomorrow. So far I've got 11 questions on the test. I might beef it up to like 12 or 13, but I'm happy with these 11 questions so far. So for your test, here's some things that I want you to know. I just want you to know basic information about viruses. What is a virus? Is it alive? Is it not alive? How is it spread? What is its structure? You should also know how the coronavirus affects the body. You should definitely be able to distinguish between the coronavirus and the flu. You should be able to explain why the coronavirus is so dangerous. And then also you need to be able to explain how we can protect ourselves from the coronavirus. Another thing that I want you to explain is the relationship between redlining and coronavirus. You'll probably have to talk a little bit about redlining pollution and the coronavirus as well, because as we know, people who are exposed to higher levels of air pollution, they are more susceptible or more vulnerable to the coronavirus, and people who lived in redline communities often are exposed to much more pollution than others. And we see this happening actually in New York City, where people in the Bronx, for example, one of the it's almost when I was in the Bronx, at least the part of the Bronx I was in, it was like all Dominican and black and yeah, Latino, mostly people of color, a smattering of white people, but mostly people of color, almost no Asians though. Anyways, the Bronx has been hit really hard by the coronavirus, and the Bronx also has a lot more pollution, so we can see how those things are interconnected. Another thing I want to ask you about is the coronavirus and how it's affected Asian Americans, specifically the sort of anti-Asian um, sentiment that is very much a danger for us in American society right now. Another thing that you should be able to do is explain the flatten the curve graph that we talked about on Thursday. And lastly, I'm going to give you a statement that I want you to respond to. So it'll be a statement, and you need to agree or disagree with the statement and give me good, solid reasons why you feel that way. So this is going to be your test. And I don't know if that's 11 bullet points, but there will be 11 questions on your test. If you know these things, you'll do well on your test. Okay, so for those of you who have a little bit of time to kill or just want to be doing more with this class, this is a link to a New York Times video from 3 weeks ago. So it's 3 weeks old, so it seems like it's very dated. As you know, New York is just kind of in an insane situation. I don't know what the death tolls have been in the past couple days, but I believe on Friday, I remember the number of people who died just on Friday was 1,200 something people, and so it's a catastrophe in New York. It's really scary. And this video is from 3 weeks ago, and it really shows how even then people knew that this was going to happen. The next video is from a website called Vox, and they're explaining the difference between the coronavirus and the flu. And there's lots of good science in this video, lots of sort of graphics which help you understand the science behind how coronavirus and the flu are very different. So check those out if you have time. If you don't have time, or if you got to make some choices about how you spend your time, definitely study for your test. If you feel like you're ready for your test, go ahead and check out these videos for sure. Tomorrow you'll log into Schoology. You'll just go ahead and take the test. There won't be any PowerPoint. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up during my office hours from 9:30 till 10:30. And you can always send me an email at sjkwok@sejongacademy.org. Okay, thank you. Peace.